Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Saiyam Pathak, and this session we'll be talking about HashiCorp Waypoint 0.7. So before that, a bit about myself. Thank you for introducing me. And I'm working as Director of Technical Evangelism at Civo, the next-gen cloud platform, managed Kubernetes based on K3S. I'm a CNCF ambassador. I'm all CK, CA, DCK certified. You can find me on Twitter at the Saiyam Pathak. I'm very active over there. And yes, you were saying about the YouTube link, and here's the YouTube link. So you can find me on YouTube, sayampathak.com/YouTube. And there are the mission is to simplify cloud native, and that's what I'm trying to do. Also, I'm an author of CKS Scenarios book, which is based on Kubernetes CKS certification. With that, let's move to the topic of the day, Waypoint. So HashiCorp introduced two products, at together, which were Waypoint and Boundary. We have heard about Boundary. Now let's talk more about Waypoint, which is solving the development to the production workflow, streamlining that process basically. So we all know Terraform, we all know Vault, we know Terraform Cloud. We know the products that have been stabilized in the CI/CD pipeline, like we have SCM system, Git is what we are using. So some tooling is stabilized, but when it comes to build, deploy, and release the application, what happens is there are different toolings, there are different platforms, and there are different tools. There's different learning curves, which is there. So Waypoint is a tool to simplify and streamline the development to production workflow. So you can define the development to production in a single file, which is waypoint.htcl, which we'll discuss more about, obviously. It works with Kubernetes, ECS, Nomad, and other platforms. So basically what that means is you can deploy to different platforms using the same file. It is easy to build, deploy, and observe application. We'll see how. It integrates well with the CI/CD ecosystem, like your GitLab CI pipelines, or it has a plugin based system, so you can bring your own plugin, the external plugin, and any other ecosystem tools. So it gives you a PaaS like experience, because you just have to write a small file and everything is done. So let's take a step back. Now we know what Waypoint is on a very, very high level, but let's take a step back to understand why it actually exists. What are some of the challenges? What was the problem? So like I told, there are different platforms which are out there where an application is deployed. Now think that a developer is there and developer is developing an application. Now obviously they're writing code, either in Go, either in Python, Node.js. So they're writing the code to solve a particular business challenge. They are not there to understand how the platforms work and how they can deploy to those platforms. So there are different platforms like ECS, EKS, Kubernetes. You have even Docker for local development. Then you have Nomad. So there are different platforms out there, and each platform, obviously, they have they are different, and there's a big learning curve for each platform. And as a developer, I should not be worrying about that learning curve, because my focus is to create the app. That's what I want to do, and just run it and see how it works with the modern platforms that are out there. And for each platform, there is a different tooling out there. So if you are using the builds, different kind of builds, like you need to have a kubectl, you need to understand Docker files, you need to understand different build tooling, different chains. So that also you have to understand. So there is a learning curve. Then you have YAML files, Docker files. You have to understand what comes where and all that fancy stuff, how to create a deployment, stateful set, service, just to get a simple application deployed and exposed, and node port. Basically, many concepts before a developer can actually deploy. So as a developer, I just need to deploy, and this is what Waypoint is actually solving. They are solving the piece where I have the source code, and from source code, I get to the URL. Try to understand this. From source code, I'm getting to the URL. That's it. I get the URL to test it. As a developer, I need to see the logs. I can see that in Waypoint. I'll show you how. I want to exec and see, change some of the stuff and see how it behaves. I might want to see if my application is running healthy. I want to access my application. And that is what just I need from my source code. I don't want to write any Docker files. I don't want to write any YAML files. I just have my source code. I wanted to deploy, and here you go. You have Waypoint now. So Waypoint started obviously as 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. It is now 0.7.1, I believe. But let's take it a 0.7 release that we're discussing today for Waypoint. It has matured a lot in the past 1.5 years, and a lot more features have been added with the community that they have asked for. Like, these are some of the cool features that we need. So that is there. So let's talk about some of the features. Single file for build, release, and deploy to all platforms, which is waypoint.hcl, that we'll see when we do the demo also, what this file is, what are different sections of the file, what are different changes that I need to. Then we have can be integrated with the current tooling. Yes, it can be integrated. So you can eliminate all the fancy scripts that are there, and you can just have waypoint up, waypoint deploy, waypoint, waypoint build, waypoint deploy. All these commands will take place of all the complex scripts that you have already written in your CI systems. So that is ease. Teams collaboration. You will be having Teams collaboration, like you have a very fancy UI of Waypoint, and you can access that Waypoint. You can share across the teams the same UI, and I'll show you, like, especially with the 0.7 release, there have been massive work in the UI, especially in the OIDC section. So you can sign on with your Google accounts, with your GitLab accounts. So all these fancy things are there. Rollbacks are there. Application configuration. So for example, like sometimes your Kubernetes is dependent on some variables, config map changes. So you can change them, and it auto deploys onto, like, it restarts your deployment as well. So that is also another cool feature. Then you have Waypoint exec log preview URL. These three are actually super important for a developer, because as a developer, you want to deploy your application, you want to see the logs of the application, you want to exec into your application, you want to preview your application, how it looks like. So that is what Waypoint is giving you. So those are some of the features which are there. We'll move to the 0.7 specifics as well, because that's what this particular session is about. And we'll do an end-to-end demo to show you from scratch how Waypoint works, what all things you need to write. And also, it is, like, I have not written over here, but Waypoint is GitOps enabled. So you can connect your Git repository with Waypoint. Any changes that you make in Git, everything is sorted over there. You get a new build. So I think it's easing out the whole development to app URL workflow. So as a developer, it's super simple to kind of developer in a development of cloud native apps, I would say. This is the architecture, how it looks like. So you have Waypoint CLI, which we'll be downloading. So that's the client side. So Waypoint CLI is there, which you can run the commands against the Kubernetes clusters or the platforms. Then you have the Waypoint server. So Waypoint server, we'll take example of Kubernetes over here. So Waypoint server is basically respond to the API requests that are coming, and it stores the data. The runner and the entry point. So there is entry Y missing over there. So it's runner and the entry point that connects back to the Waypoint. So Waypoint is not going over there. There is a backward connection, outbound connection from the Waypoint runner, and that is done. And the runners are the actual stuff that is doing the job, the whole job. So Waypoint server queues the job, and Waypoint runner dequeues the job, and it runs the actual stuff of build, deploy, release, and give you the URLs on the platforms like Kubernetes, ECS, Nomad, etc. An entry point is something which gets injected to the Waypoint, injected to your build, and it helps you for your logs and stuff like that. So that's how the architecture looks like. A Waypoint server is a stateful set. We'll see that. Waypoint runner is a deployment, which is the pod which is there. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, extensibility. Very fancy feature of Waypoint is extensive. It is extensible. It has a lot of built-in plugins, and there are plugins that you can use externally. There's a way to do that, documentation to do that. Like you have some of the plugins that I have mentioned on the left-hand side, like you have Pack, which is the cloud native build packs for building the images just from your source codes. You have Docker. Now Docker can be as a builder plugin where you are building the application, registry plugin where you are pushing the images, platform where you want to deploy your app as a Docker container itself. So there are like, it can be used in 3 ways. Helm, which was, I think, introduced in 0.6 onwards. So deploy to K8s using Helm charts. So I think that is pretty cool. Like, you have your application as a Helm chart, you can directly deploy your Helm charts. Kubernetes as a platform, which is there, you can deploy your applications, YAMLs, source code to Kubernetes. So they will be deployed as deployments. Then you have Vault. So Vault and HashiCorp Terraform Cloud is there. So from where you can read the configuration. So you can read the configurations from Vault. Now also you can do it dynamically from Vault. So I think that's pretty interesting. And on the right hand side, you can see all the list of other built-in plugins which are there. Like, you can deploy to Google Cloud Run, to Azure Container Instance and stuff like that. So that's the power of plugins that are there. And I think they are improving on that front. They are creating more plugins, improving the existing ones with the community inputs. Waypoint 0.7 is the fancy UI updates, is the biggest feature. So you have exec into the container using the web UI. You have OIDC web login. You have timelines which are there. The deployments are also very streamlined. I will obviously go through all the features. You have triggers. So as of now, it's triggers makes it easy to execute a waypoint operation when you talk about a CI pipeline. So you can configure a trigger. Right now it's only gRPC, but in future it will be HTTP as well. So and it is project scoped, so you'll be having trigger without having any in your CI systems, without having any waypoint library or waypoint clients. You will be able to trigger those directly using grp curl and those requests, the triggers. Workspace scope config, so you can create workspace. So there's a new CLI command for creating the waypoint create workspace that you can do. And your scoping can be done workspace wise. For example, you can have a different version of image for an application per workspace. That can be a very simple example. Data fetching. So you can have config dynamic configurations function to get the data from Vault, Terraform Cloud, and inject those into your applications. Then obviously OIDC, you can connect to your Waypoint UI or log into your Waypoint UI using OIDC web via Google, GitLab, and other providers, Okta integration as well. So we'll go through it. We'll see how much time we have. Yeah, so all the demo will be hosted on Civo. So let's move to, not to the thank you slide, to the demo slide. So I have to reshare. Let me stop share. You have to see my face now, bigger face. And let me share the screen. And here we are. So I hope you are able to see the demo screen. Basically the terminal, the fancy terminal that you are looking forward to, how to get started. So what we'll do is, the first step that we'll do is we'll do a Civo K3s create. So I'm using the Civo CLI itself. So what we are doing is Civo K3s create waypoint demo, and we are waiting for the cluster to spin up. So that is happening now. So it is basically creating a 3-node cluster. Why I'm using Civo, I'll do like everything from scratch. So everything is happening from scratch. But what I can show you is, on the other hand, the files which are there. So this is a simple repository and files. I'll show you in the GitHub as well. So let's talk about the Waypoint HCL, which is obviously the core and the essence of this particular demo. Let me know if you are able to see the Waypoint HCL file. I think you might not be seeing that. That is a problem with screen shares. Okay. Now you should be able to see the Waypoint HCL file. So this is the Waypoint HCL file. First is the app. Then we have the build section. In the build section, we are using pack, which I told you, like cloud native build packs. In the registry, I'm using Docker, and this is the image. and I have given some fancy tag over here so that it can, on every commit that I do in Git, it will give me a fancy tag. Then deploy I want to do on Kubernetes. I can define a service port. I can also define some of the complex scenarios like auto scaling. So you have some of the auto scaling stuff that you want to do. I can define those as well in the Kubernetes section. Then on the release side, I have just given, I want this service not as a load balancer, but as what you call a node port. So I have given that. So I think that is very simple. That's only the file. And if you talk about the command, so in the proc file, it's simple that it is running. In the source, I just have a very simple app.py. So it's a Flask application. Nothing. It does pretty much, displaying the HTML file and just running one function for that. If you see in the templates, and we have the index HTML. So you can see one thing. If I go back, yeah, I do not have any Docker file. I do not have any deployment or any other file which is there. What I have is just my source code. I have like defined it in a very regular way. I have a requirement.txt. I have like, all the normal stuff which is out there. So let's go back to the cluster which got created. I have to again share because I'm watching it is not visible to you the screen. So let me, I don't know why I have to do it again and again, but anyways, it's okay. So now the cluster is created. That's the beauty of CO. Like I get to get the cluster easily. So now I am getting the kube config file for my cluster. You can see the cluster got created in 1 minute 55 seconds, which is cool. And now I will be exporting the kube config variable. So kubectl get nodes. So you can see the nodes are there. Oh, let me just remove this file and get the file again. Because it, I think, merged. Okay. Yep. So now we are at the right cluster. So it's 96 seconds older. Cool. So let me clear the screen so that you can see clearly. Now the only command that I will run is waypoint up. Waypoint init first. Sorry. So we'll do waypoint init. And now what we have to do is we have to install Waypoint. So right now Waypoint client is there with me. So try to understand that the Waypoint client is with me. Waypoint server we need to install on the Kubernetes. So let's do that. So Waypoint install -- platform Kubernetes. Now here you can give different platforms. You can give Docker, you can give Nomad, you can give ECS. So those are the platform that you can give, and accept terms of service just to make sure that things are ready over there. In the back end, I'm not doing anything, to be honest. So I'm just adding a one firewall rule, which I know is required for this particular thing. So let me just add that rule. It's okay even if you don't see that. Yeah, so what we'll do is, to show you what is happening, we'll go to other screen and we'll export the same kube config file here as well, so that we can see what all things are getting created. Kubectl get pods. So you can see a waypoint server as a stateful set, as I mentioned, is getting created, and we'll be getting kubectl get pv. Our pv will be getting created. So you have a pv which is already created, pvc, it's already bound to that. Yep, it's in container creating. It must be downloading the image and stuff like that. Yeah, it's already done. And now it is creating the deployment for runner. So runner is the pod which actually does all the fancy stuff. So we need a runner pod. And after this, done, I get to have a complete waypoint stuff which is there. Like you have Waypoint installed, I can authenticate. So now I will do a Waypoint UI authenticate, and it will automatically open a Waypoint UI for me, and it will, let me first do it, because then I again have to share the screen. Cool. So let me share the screen back. This is the regular stuff that we have to go through. Sorry for that. Cool. So this is the Waypoint UI. That is there. So you can see it's super fancy. Everything that I do with the UI, I can actually do with the what you call the CLI as well. So, but right now we are using the UI because I want to show you the GitHub stuff, which is which is present. So this is the repository which is happening, and these are the steps, some of the steps that I have done, Waypoint authenticate and stuff like that. So now let's go here, create a new project. Let's call it HashiTalks 2022, and I'll mark it as connect to repository. So I'll create the particular project. I'll give the Waypoint GitHub URL. And before that, obviously, we need to add some variables, which are the user and one of the passwords. I hope that the password would have been, masked. But anyways, I'm sure I'll delete that afterwards. So no authentication, and I enable automated deployment on changes. So means as soon as I apply, it will try to fetch from the repository. Okay, there's something that I missed. Let me get the URL from here. Yep. So it has demo. It came automatically. Now soon we can see, yeah, it has already started building. So you can see the build has automatically started. I haven't done anything. So you can see I just imported it as a GitOps kind of manner, and it automatically appeared here. The build has already started, and we are already running that stuff. In the meanwhile, till the build happens, I'll show you one of the other features which is there for Waypoint 0.7. So let me just again do a share, because that particular session is on my Safari browser, I believe. So, yep. So I already have done the OIDC connect for Google. I think this is the first time that you are seeing, because there's 0.7 feature. You might not see anywhere else. It's pretty simple. You just have to go to your Google account and create the credentials for OIDC, get the client ID and the secret, and you can create that particular stuff, and you will be getting the Google kind of stuff over here. So welcome to Waypoint. I click on Google. It redirects me to choose one of the accounts. I click on one of the accounts, and I am into Waypoint. So that's how fancy and awesome it is to connect. I mean, for you, it might be looking at it as a small feature, but it is not. It is super fancy. And in the meanwhile, that portion is deploying, we can walk through some of the features of Waypoint, which are there from the UI. So when the application gets deployed, it looks something like this, and you have the builds over here like v6, v5. So all the builds are here, and here only you'll be able to see all those like v6, v5. So on the right hand side, on the left hand side, there's a navigation. On the right hand side, you are seeing. Now this is the timeline feature. So you get to know. So as soon as a developer logs in, they get to know like we are here. So we are at this particular deployment, and each deployment, obviously they get a URL that you can click, and you can go and you can visit and see what is happening in the URL. So that's what I clicked. This is what HashiCorp Waypoint deployed to CO Kubernetes, and hope you are enjoying the demo. So that is what is happening. What else is there? Yeah, you have the resources, the deployment logs. So that's what I was telling, like you can see the builds, all the builds that have happened, and you can see the releases. So these are the releases. You can see the logs. So these are logs from the container, and you can see the resources. Like I have this particular deployment, I can go to that deployment, I can see what all pods are there. I can also see what got deployed. I can come to exec. So this will exec me into the container. I can do ls. You can see I'm already inside the container, super fancy and super easy to kind of check. These are the workspaces. So I created a workspace. I can easily switch between the workspaces, and I can also invite my team using this token. So this is called team collaboration. And what else is there in the UI? Let's check everything. So yeah, this is what is on a very high level, the UI, and I think they are working more on getting the triggers portion done in the next releases, making it more easy to integrate with your existing CI systems, and more work on the UI, obviously, to improve and get more details out of that. And you can also see, if I click on it, I can see the JSON, the exact stuff that is getting deployed. So you can see the images which are there, and yeah, this is what which is getting deployed onto the cluster. So you can see the fancy image tag as well that I gave. It came beautifully over here. So let's go back, and I'll just take another minute or two. I don't know how much time is left. Until these people tell me to stop, I won't stop. No, just kidding. Let me go back to the other tab. Yep. So you can see that the build has been successful. So we have the successful build over here. Let's go back to demo and see our application is completely deployed, and it should be kind of running. Cool. And as soon as I make any change to the source code repository, we can actually do it very quickly. And I'll show you one last thing. I know they were running ahead of schedule. Now they might be running behind the schedule. Sorry for that. So let's give a couple more hearts to HashiCorp for creating the beautiful product. And what else is there? Yeah, this is the GitHub repository. I'll make sure the link is there with you. So this is the complete GitHub repository. All the steps that I did are mentioned over here. And this is how the OIDC auth looked like. So you create an app, and the consent screen, you add OIDC credential. And this is how you add it, like Waypoint auth method set OIDC. I give the client ID. So that will be your client ID, your client secret. And the issuer will be account.google.com. Make sure you have the allowed redirect URL, because the redirect URLs are important. So this particular URL is what you have to mention in the redirect URL when you are creating the OIDC secret for the web application. So that's pretty much it that you have to do. And after that, you'll be having that fancy Google login with Google and doing that stuff. So let's go to the builds, and we can see the second build already started. So that's how fancy it is, the GitOps way of doing things. So the developer only has to focus now on the Git repository and pushing the code, and everything else happens automatically. So this is what HashiCorp is, HashiCorp Waypoint I had. If you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, on Slack, or on any medium that you would like. And I'll be staying there in the YouTube chat as well. So yep, I'll stop share the screen, and thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the session.
Yeah,
if you enjoyed, you should give thumbs up and the claps in the comments.
Yeah, and in the comments, we don't have any questions so far, but if you do have questions that come up, Saiyam